Azerbaijan on the Caspian Sea, oil and gas rich. It dug the world's first oil wells back in the 1840s. Fossil fuels still make up 60% of the country's revenues.
Having oil and gas deposits is not our fault. It's a gift of the God.
President Ilham Aliyev is close to Russia, Baku a bridge to Europe. And as host of COP29, Azerbaijan is welcoming the world's climate delegates. The problem is their goal is to cut fossil fuel dependency, so the duality is an issue.
Is a conflict of interest to allow a major producer of oil and gas to be custodian of climate talks that are designed to reduce emissions in order to achieve a livable future for everyone.
President-elect Donald J. Trump.
COP29 is stacked with challenges, starting with the shadow of Donald Trump back in the White House.
We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia.
No champion of climate action.
We will drill, baby, drill.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real.
The last time Trump was president, in 2017,
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
he signaled he'd do it again. At COP29, delegates will be mapping out how to navigate the U.S.'s expected retreat on climate policy.
It's a huge, huge setback for the global climate action. It's devastating, to say the least. With Trump now taking leadership role in the US, we will not see any substantive climate action from the United States, which is massive because US is the biggest historical emitter, and US not being at the table is going to hurt everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone.
The U.S. climate envoy, John Podesta, is trying to reassure the conference.
This is not the end of our fight for a cleaner, safer planet. Facts are still facts. Science is still science. The fight is bigger than one election, one political cycle, in one country.
So as COP begins, expectations are low and the scrutiny is high. Just a year ago, Azerbaijan attacked a breakaway republic of ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Recently, President Aliyev has tightened his fist, arresting political opposition.
It has jailed journalists. Anyone who seems to not want to toe the official party line is either dealt with in terms of incarceration or moved out of sight.
Hosting COP is in part a bid to burnish its international credentials.
They are a significant energy producer. They are looking to make some transitions to greener energy future. But the real purpose, I think, for them was, again, this Azerbaijan as an international player, getting the country back on the global map.
The pressure is on this year's COP president, Azerbaijan's Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources, to bridge a growing gap between rich and poor nations.
We send a clear and strong signal that more public and private finance will be allocated to climate targets.
But a senior member of his COP team is already embroiled in controversy, recorded apparently promoting partnerships for oil and gas deals with the state energy company. COP29 is nicknamed the Finance COP, laser focused on money. At the heart of it, how to find over $1 trillion to help countries adapt to the changing climate and pay for the mounting damages from it.
There are billions of very poor, very vulnerable people around the world in developing countries that are experiencing the impacts of climate change. Now, it's a big topic.
Jennifer Morgan is Germany's climate envoy on a recent trip to Canada.
The main sticking point is, can the world come together to reset the finance discussion in the midst of quite a lot of uncertainty?
This year saw even more severe climate disasters. tragic deaths, and skyrocketing bills for cleanup, undeniable signs of the growing urgency.
We are teetering on a planetary tightrope. Either leaders bridge the emissions gap, or we plunge headlong into climate disaster, with the poorest and most vulnerable suffering the most.
Geopolitical pressures, wars, elections, and worldwide debt will make success at COP even more challenging. Catherine Abreu is a longtime climate policy analyst.
I think it is going to be a big fight at this year's set of UN climate talks between developing countries rightly demanding the amount of support that they need from rich nations, while rich nations are claiming that they really don't have that money to spend.
Last year's COP28 in Dubai ended with a promise to transition away from fossil fuels. But that hasn't happened. Oil and gas production has risen in Canada and the US to record levels, with forecasts for more next year. Renewable energy, especially solar, has soared this year, but that hasn't outpaced oil and gas, partly because of a galloping demand for more electricity. As temperatures continue to climb, 2024 is certain to be the warmest year on record and consistently above 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming.
I think as one of the rich G7 nations, developing countries are going to be looking to Canada to increase our climate finance pledge again. Whether that's realistic, whether Canada is prepared to do that in an election year, I think is an open question.
But the planet has its own timeline. And the heating seas, savage storms, and human impact is forcing leaders to confront the mounting costs and who pays.
It's going to be hard. I don't go into this with unbounded optimism here, but I think there can be progress made. There's a momentum to understanding that we are facing climate change.
COP29 is steering into more climate chaos.
The world is changing. It needs to happen more quickly so that we can avoid even more extreme impacts. You can't stand still anymore. You just can't stand still.